Well, Jake Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts. Today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
I keep returning to one name again and again, Anthony Joshua, because he didn't simply win a fight. He unintentionally became the wrecking ball that shattered a carefully protected illusion. And I don't believe AJ even planned to do it that way, which somehow makes it hit harder, because this wasn't personal drama or clout chasing. This was a professional heavyweight stepping in, doing exactly what his job requires, and walking away while leaving behind proof that no PR team, no lawyer, and no podcast appearance can erase once people truly take the time to see it.
At any point did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. You know, I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, like there was a point where, you know, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, you know, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that like violence war thing between us, like after he slapped me, I wanted to, you know, be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the...
Jake Paul built his entire boxing identity around control. Control of his opponents, control of the narrative, and control of expectations. And when that control disappeared for 6 brutal rounds in Miami, you could almost see the panic take hold, not only on Jake's face, but across the entire ecosystem surrounding him. Because when the main pillar starts to crack, everyone leaning on it feels the shock, and that is exactly what we're now watching unfold in slow, unsettling motion. People keep asking why the FBI angle hits so hard, and the reason is simple. Federal attention does not care about vibes, hype, or fandoms. It focuses on patterns, money, and coordination, and once gambling enters the picture, once sportsbooks and international bettors are involved, the entire tone changes, because this stops being YouTube beef and starts looking like potential wire fraud, and anyone who understands that knows just how quickly things can spiral out of control.
Mike Tyson repeatedly bit his boxing glove throughout the fight. When fights are scripted, fighters do weird gestures to signal that they're hurt. It's very possible Mike Tyson was biting on his glove to tell Jake Paul to calm down. Now, if that's not enough proof that this fight was scripted, in the middle of the fight, Mike Tyson is literally talking to Jake Paul while...
I don't think Logan Paul is stupid, and that's exactly what worries me, because smart people don't panic unless they're seeing something they know they can't outmaneuver. The reports of visible stress, the sudden silence, the overly careful wording, all of it points to internal crisis management rather than confidence. I've seen this pattern play out across other industries enough times to recognize the look of people realizing the walls around them are much thinner than they believed. Say Mike Tyson's name out loud again, because that's where a lot of fans emotionally snapped, not out of disrespect, but out of confusion. Since watching a 60-year-old icon move and behave in ways that didn't match decades of muscle memory was genuinely jarring. And once people stopped reacting emotionally and started rewinding clips, the questions began multiplying faster than the answers, and nobody has really been able to stop that momentum from building.
Differences, the weight difference in there, I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. You know, for me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, you know, of the weight difference, and, you know, Joshua is a former, you know, champion. And also, you know, he's current, he's active, you know, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul, you know, fighting an active fighter. You know what I mean? We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, you know what I'm saying? It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real...
Eddie Hearn knew exactly what he was doing when he went into defense mode, because promoters operate in the gray areas of the sport. But even then, he sounded less like someone dismissing noise and more like someone trying to get ahead of a problem. And Way said we'd be investigated if this was fixed. I remember thinking, why even frame it that way? Unless that possibility is already sitting in the room with you, staring you straight in the face. The leaked Tyson script still bothers me, not because every single line matched perfectly, but because enough of it did to raise real discomfort. Real conspiracies don't look like movies. They look messy, slightly off, and imperfect. And that's exactly what made this unsettling, because it felt more like a working document than a wild fantasy. And once that seed of doubt was planted, the Joshua knockout didn't calm anything down. It poured gasoline on the fire and made everything spread faster.
You need to do your part to get it into the 5th, 6th, or whatever.
Absolutely no way ever. I mean, if you look at a couple of the right hands that AJ missed with in the first couple of rounds, like, they would have done the same job on Jake's jaw if they would have landed. And Jake did very well to avoid them. So I always said going into the fight, AJ's not the kind of guy that's going to come out like a train, just start swinging away. He's going to take his time, and that's what he did. You know, the fight definitely went a few more rounds than anticipated from Anthony, but it's like, even now, it's like, yeah, it was definitely a fix. Some guy commented today on one of my posts, yeah, it was definitely a fix. Okay.
Paulie Malignaggi didn't sound bitter when he spoke about Jake Paul's career arc. He sounded analytical, almost relieved, like someone who was finally allowed to say out loud what he'd been holding back for a long time. And when seasoned fighters start aligning with casual fans instead of brushing them off or dismissing their concerns, that's the moment narratives flip for good, because credibility has quietly changed hands. I also can't ignore Nikisa Badarian's media tour, because the more he spoke, the more defensive the entire operation began to feel, saying shady things happen in boxing while simultaneously insisting you're completely clean isn't the reassurance people think it is. Instead, it reminds everyone just how dirty the sport can be and how thin the line really is when entertainment and real competition start blurring into one another.
His California mansion has been raided by the FBI. Multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas. Attorney told Reuters he would cooperate with the federal investigation.
Like after his boxing career.
People think I do steroids and all this shit, so I have a plan. Because I think it's fucking bizarre. That's like the only excuse they can come up with is like rigged fights. Jake Paul does steroids. So after boxing, I'm going to do a cycle of steroids to show people what Jake Paul on steroids actually looks like, because I want to shut people the fuck up.
Jake talking about steroids, joking or not, was one of the strangest self-inflicted wounds I've seen, because when you're already under suspicion, bravado doesn't diffuse tension. It pours gasoline on it. Instead of calming doubts, it reframed them, pushing people to ask why someone so eager to clear their name would flirt with the very accusations hanging over them, and that's not how innocence usually sounds. The Veda testing situation with Tommy Fury never really disappeared. It was just buried under louder moments, but now it's resurfacing with real force, because patterns matter more in hindsight. Refusing stricter testing no longer looks strategic. It looks evasive, especially when combined with physical changes that made even neutral observers stop and raise their eyebrows.
Once in Jake Paul's career, been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. The narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take Matt.
What truly changed after Joshua wasn't just the loss itself. It was the entire tone of the public conversation, because suddenly nobody was laughing anymore and nobody was making memes. People shifted into analysis mode, slowing footage down, comparing timelines, and scrutinizing details. And once fans turn into investigators, the fun, circus-like part is over and the consequences phase begins. The Calabasas raid is the image that will linger the longest, because optics matter, and aerial footage of federal agents carrying evidence out of your mansion is not something you can simply spin away with reminders of charity work or polished motivational speeches. That visual alone permanently altered public perception, whether formal charges ever come or not. and that shift is already locked in.
The fact that he did that, it was good because you know we didn't think it was going to go 6 rounds. We thought it was going to go 2. So the fact that he made 6 rounds is an accomplishment for Jake Paul.
Was there anything that stuck out with you from the fight?
Yeah, really, who was in better shape? I thought that Joshua was in great shape compared to, Jake Paul, because he was running around the ring.
You guys gotta walk,
and that takes out a lot of energy, especially when you're not used.
I keep thinking about how quickly this escalated from influencer boxing to a legitimate heavyweight collapse and then to federal attention. And it makes me wonder who underestimated who. Because somewhere along the line, someone truly believed the brand was untouchable, that the momentum was simply too big to stop. Even though history is full of people who believed the same thing right before everything fell apart. Anthony Joshua will walk away from this mostly untouched, his legacy intact, and maybe even enhanced, because he did exactly what champions do. But Jake Paul doesn't get that same luxury, since his entire identity was built around proving doubters wrong, and now those doubts aren't quiet whispers anymore. They're mainstream conversation, which is a brutal place to exist in public. I keep coming back to one name again and again, Anthony Joshua, because he didn't just win a fight. He accidentally became the wrecking ball that shattered a carefully protected illusion, and I don't even think AJ meant to do it that way, which somehow makes it worse, because this wasn't personal beef or clout chasing. It was a professional heavyweight stepping in, doing his job, and leaving behind evidence that no PR team, no lawyer, and no podcast appearance can erase once people really take a close look. Jake Paul built his entire boxing identity on control. Control of opponents, control of narratives, control of expectations. And when that control disappeared for 6 brutal rounds in Miami, you could almost see the panic set in, not just on Jake's face, but across the entire ecosystem around him. Because when the central pillar cracks, everyone leaning on it feels the tremor. And that's exactly what we're watching now in slow, terrifying motion. People keep asking why the FBI angle hit so hard, and it's because federal attention doesn't care about vibes or fandoms. It cares about patterns, money, and coordination. And once gambling enters the picture, once sportsbooks and international bettors are involved, the tone shifts completely. Because this stops being YouTube beef and starts looking like potential wire fraud. And anyone who understands that knows how fast things can spiral. I don't think Logan Paul is stupid, and that's what worries me. Because smart people don't panic unless they see something they know they can't outmaneuver. And the reports of visible stress, the sudden silence, the careful wording, all of it screams internal crisis management, not confidence. And I've seen this enough in other industries to recognize the look of people realizing the walls are thinner than they thought. Say Mike Tyson's name out loud again, because that's where a lot of fans emotionally snapped. Not out of disrespect, but confusion. Because watching a 60-year-old icon behave in ways that didn't match decades of muscle memory was jarring. And once people started rewinding clips instead of just reacting, the questions multiplied faster than the answers. Eddie Hearn knew exactly what he was doing when he went into defense mode. Because promoters live in the gray area. But even he sounded like someone trying to get ahead of something rather than dismiss it. And when he said we'd be investigated if this was fixed, I remember thinking why you would even frame it that way unless the possibility was already sitting in the room with you, staring you down. The leaked Tyson script still bothers me, not because every line matched perfectly, but because enough of it did. And real conspiracies don't look like movies. They look messy, slightly off, and imperfect, which is what made it unsettling, because it felt like a working document, not a fantasy. And once that seed was planted, the Joshua knockout poured gasoline on the fire. Paulie Malignaggi didn't sound bitter when he talked about Jake Paul's career arc. He sounded analytical, almost relieved, like someone finally allowed to say what they'd been holding back. And when seasoned fighters start aligning with casual fans instead of dismissing them, that's when narratives flip permanently, because credibility has changed hands. I also can't ignore Nikisa Badarian's media tour, because the more he talked, the more defensive the operation felt, and saying shady things happen in boxing while insisting you're totally clean isn't reassuring. It's a reminder of how dirty the sport can be and how thin the line really is when entertainment and competition blur together. Jake joking about steroids, or not joking at all, was one of the strangest self-inflicted wounds I've seen, because when you're already under suspicion, bravado turns into gasoline, and instead of calming doubts, it reframed them, making people ask why someone so desperate to clear their name would flirt with the very accusations haunting them, and that's not how innocence usually sounds. The Veda testing situation with Tommy Fury never truly went away. It was just buried under louder events, but now it's resurfacing with teeth, because patterns matter more in hindsight, and refusing stricter testing no longer looks strategic. It looks evasive, especially when paired with physical changes that made even neutral observers raise their eyebrows. What really changed after Joshua wasn't just a loss. It was the tone of the public conversation, because nobody was laughing anymore. Nobody was memeing. People were analyzing, slowing footage down, comparing timelines, and once fans turn into investigators, the fun part of circus ends, and the consequences part begins. The Calabasas raid is the visual that will stick forever, because optics matter, and aerial footage of federal agents carrying evidence out of your mansion isn't something you can spin away with reminders of charity work or motivational speeches, and that image alone rewired public perception whether charges come or not. Boxing itself is collateral damage here, because every scandal reopens old wounds, every allegation feeds cynicism, and fans who already struggled to trust the sport now feel justified in their skepticism, which hurts fighters who have nothing to do with this, but will still pay the price in credibility. I don't believe the story has revealed its ugliest chapter yet, and that's not hype. It's pattern recognition, because when investigations start quietly and leaks come in consistently, it usually means people are talking, deals are being considered, and information is being weighed, and that process rarely ends with a clean press release. Jake Paul may try to come back or pivot again, but pivots don't erase timelines, and timelines don't forget, because the internet doesn't move on the way it used to. It archives, cross-references, and waits, and the next revelation will hit harder precisely, because people think the storm has passed. I'm not rooting for anyone's downfall, but I am watching accountability knock louder than it ever has before, and the scariest part is that nobody knows which door it's going to break through first, because this isn't finished, it's just paused, and pauses like this usually mean something big is being lined up behind the curtain.